Hey Rebels, welcome to Blasphemous Nutrition. Consider this podcast your pantry full of clarity, perspective, and the nuance needed to counter the superficial health advice so freely given on the internet. I'm Aimee, the unapologetically candid host of Blasphemous Nutrition and a double-degreed nutritionist with 20 years experience. I'm here to share a more nuanced take on living and eating well to sustain and recover your health. If you found most health advice to be so generic as to be meaningless, or so extreme that it's unrealistic, and you don't mind the occasional F-bomb, you've come to the right place. From dissecting the latest nutrition trends to breaking down published research and sharing my own clinical experiences, I'm on a mission to foster clarity amidst all the confusion and empower you to have the health you need to live a life you love. Now let's get started. Do you struggle with prepping meals to get you through the week, being able to eat the way that you want to? In today's episode, I interview Allison Schaaf of Prep Dish, who, when I listened to this interview as I was editing it, I realized I sound very much like the little fangirl speaking to her, but it probably is not an overstatement to call myself that. I have personally used Prep Dish in my household off and on for the last 5, going on 6 years. Gosh, no, it's been longer than that. And it has been such an incredible help when life gets chaotic and hectic enough that I struggle to keep all the pieces moving in that forward momentum that I need to do on a regular basis to feel my best. What I love about Prep Dish that is different from other meal plans is how well organized the system that Allison has created is. The way it is laid out, it is very easy to prep some, but perhaps not all of the meals in a given week. It's really easy to get to the grocery store, look at the list of things that you need to buy on the printout, and then realize, oh, I want to make a substitution there. This item on the shopping list isn't something that's going to work for my family. You can very easily, very quickly see what meal that ingredient goes in so that you can make an appropriate substitution or decide to omit it entirely because you realize it isn't actually a core component of that meal, which is something that no other meal plan I've ever come across has figured out. And so Prep Dish is incredibly effective, incredibly straightforward. The meals are kid-friendly, but also give you an opportunity to expand your child's palate, which is something that we talk about in this episode. And I really genuinely can't say enough about Prep Dish as a valuable tool to have available for those times when you're really struggling to keep it all together in the kitchen. So in this episode, we talk about feeding families, young children, how to make all of this work when you are extremely busy, and how to begin utilizing meal prepping in your life if that's something that you're not accustomed to or haven't yet quite figured out. I really appreciate all of Alice's wisdom that she has gleaned from her years working as a professional personal chef, and then now being the mother of 3 boys. If you want more tips from Allison, be sure to listen to her podcast, Meal Prep Monday, wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you feel so inspired by this episode, be sure to check out the 2-week trial run of Prep Dish. The link is in the show notes. This is a free trial for you to give it a shot and see why I am such a fangirl. All right, on to the show. Allison Schaaf, welcome to Blasphemous Nutrition.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm excited for our conversation today.
I am super excited to have you on as well. I've been a huge fan of Prep Dish since I was in grad school, actually. And I had a 4-year-old at home, and just being able to effectively outsource thinking about meals was such a game changer for me. And I've loved using Prep Dish periodically throughout my life when things get super hectic, and it's a client favorite whenever I recommend them. So it's really exciting to have you here and get a chance to know you and talk a little bit about some of your tried and true tips to making it all work when so many of us feel stretched so thin and so busy, but we're really committed to eating healthy meals.
Well, I can certainly touch on that. I've had quite a few weeks the past few weeks. So
you want to dive right in and let us know what's been going on?
Oh, my goodness. Well, so I have 3 kids at home, a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 4-month-old, all boys. And we've always worked with au pairs because I have Prep Dish, so I've worked. And if anyone's not familiar, au pair is sort of like a nanny, but they come from another country and help out. And it's a wonderful experience, but we've sometimes had gaps. And we recently went through a little bit of a gap, and it happened to coincide with my husband taking a week-long work trip to Singapore. So,
oh my goodness.
I had to figure out here and there, but it all came together and it all worked out, and we still ate. We actually ate Prep Dish meals. I still did my Prep Dish meal plans, and we survived.
All right. Give me the play-by-play. How did you make this all happen?
Yeah. So the older 2 go to school Monday through Thursday. So they're in school kind of part-time. So that's helpful. And then the baby does nap. I swear when I'm with him, though, he takes shorter naps and I try to be flattered. I'm like, he just wants to hang out with me. But for the moms who say they work from home and still watch their kids, I don't know how they do that. I have always had help in some form to help me work while also I don't know, I don't try and do the watch my kids and work at the same time. That's really hard for me to do.
Yeah.
And I had some babysitters that came in on a few days that helped out. So
you were able to cobble babysitters and
piece it all together, and meals specifically. So we live in the country and are not close to a grocery store. And I've actually been doing grocery delivery on a regular basis for the past kind of few years, ever since they've had it out here. Just that's the phase that I'm in right now. I just feel like that's easier. As much as I used to love going to the grocery store, right now, that's one of those hacks that I use is I do my grocery order, and that makes that part easier. And the meal plans are like a grocery list and prep instructions and all that, but it's nice because I can pull up the grocery list and make the order that way. And I try and always get that order in a few days in advance before, we're ready for our next round of meals. They're supposed to cover about a week. I find sometimes with my family, we end up doing 2 kind of prep days a week. Just, my husband and I both work from home. We're eating a lot of dinners for dinner, and we're eating all of our meals at home. And 3 days a week, the boys are all eating all of their meals at home.
Yeah. 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 I found breaking it up into 2 prep days to be very helpful for me as well. In part because if I spend my whole Sunday in the kitchen prepping, I end up getting very angry. Even if it's, even if I'm able to do it in, 3 hours or so, still, I feel like, no, this is the day I want to enjoy myself. So I usually do a little bit of prep on Sunday and then a little bit of prep on Wednesday. And it also keeps the veggies, nice and fresh and stuff as well.
The thing that I always like to do is I like to do the prep right before, leading up to a meal. So say Saturday dinner or Sunday lunch, whatever it is. And so that way, in my mind, I'm like, well, I'm already making a meal and I'm just doing some extra work. And at the end of it, I have one meal ready to go. And then I've also prepped myself for the next few days. So that's a lot of times how I mindset shift it to I'm just making my meal and happen to be doing a little extra work while, especially if it's a meal that, some meals do take an hour to make. So within that hour, I'm getting all my veggies chopped for the week. So
that's a great idea. I love that idea. Are any of the 2 older boys picky eaters?
So they are not. And I know in part we just lucked out, but I do like to think I played a part in that. We, did baby-led weaning, have never bought a chicken nugget or macaroni and cheese or anything like that. We've always I make the same meals I've made for the past 10 years. I'm rotating new flavors and stuff. But I still eat the same way, and they just eat the same thing. There hasn't been an option to not do that. And they'll go through phases where it's, oh, I don't like that. And I'll just say, okay, then, don't eat that. But there's always something on their plate that they'll eat. And I find a lot of times what'll happen is if it's something new at dinner, they'll say, I don't like that. And I think they just, in part, just want to be heard.
Mhm.
So I say, okay. And then we'll serve usually the same thing at lunch the next day. And I found a lot of times by lunch the next day, they'll be eating it. And even sometimes by the end of the meal, like they'll start by saying, I don't like that. And I say, okay. But then I look over and by the time the meal's done, they've eaten it. So I think sometimes they just want to have the authority to have an opinion. But yeah, they're very good eaters. I also get them very involved in the kitchen. So I went to culinary school and I've always envisioned having kids that love to be in the kitchen. And they go through phases of wanting to be with me in the kitchen. But right now, the 3-year-old is actually like obsessed to a point where he gets in. And if he did not prepare the meal, he starts to have a meltdown because he wanted to help prepare the meal, which is hard because sometimes it is leftovers. I'm like, well, no, buddy, I didn't do anything. Like you didn't miss anything. He loves to sit. This morning we had plantains at breakfast and I've like he has his knife and he slices them and, is very right there with me at the stove, very involved. And I think that also helps a lot with them not being picky eaters because they're involved throughout the whole process.
Right. They take some ownership for the meal and that gives them that sense of pride and efficacy and empowerment that, I think would make one more inclined to participate in eating the meal as well.
Yes. And I don't even think I've posted this on social media lately, but we have this thing called a lettuce grow. I don't know if you've seen it's like this tower that you can grow lettuces in. It's amazing. I think it was created by someone. I'm in the Austin area. I think it's like a local person that created these like towers. And I think there's different brands too. But once you get it set up, it's a really easy way to grow lettuce. But the thing I found is with the boys, they love it because they know they can sneak by. They almost feel like they're doing something they shouldn't. They'll like go by and like, I ate some lettuce. And I'm like, okay. So they'll just, randomly run up to that tower and eat lettuce, like munch on lettuce throughout the day. And like when we finish our meals, they'll go out and like, I just ate some lettuce. And so that's been a really fun way to get them to eat lettuce.
Yeah, my son went through this vegetable phobic phase when he was about 2 or 3 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And it was extremely painful for me to witness that and to try and deal with that. And that's when I actually started pureeing vegetables and sneaking them into ground meat to disguise it and give him a little bit more than tomato sauce and ketchup was essentially it. And I think baby carrots. Everything else was off the table. But when he entered about 3, I think was about the time that he started coming around. And I remember this moment where we were at a nursery and he's standing in the rain and he's picking some of the lettuce shoots that are being sold and putting them in his mouth. And I was so excited that he was eating lettuce. I was like, I don't care that he's eating these plants in the garden because he's back to eating plants. It's great.
Yes, no, it's so good. Like, so the school they go to, they have soup once a week, but how it works, each kid brings their own vegetable in. And I've noticed my kids used to not like a lot of times soup, like I would drain it out. And I don't know, soup was always a trickier one, especially sometimes they don't like everything mixed together.
Yeah.
And because so like if we'll do some dishes, I have found that if I separate them out into each food item, like separate, like that does help if you do have a picky eater, because then they don't sometimes like it all mixed together. But soups, anyway, so each Tuesday they pick a vegetable from their house, they bring it, and all the kids contribute a vegetable and they make this soup. And the kids all eat it because they've contributed it. And so I think that's another place where let them decide, find a place. For example, in the mornings, we always have fruit as our snack in the mornings. And so a lot of times I'll say like, well, what fruit do you want to eat? And so when they can be a part of the decision-making process, and if you can set the boundaries correctly where it's not like, well, we're going to have, ice cream every morning for a snack. But like, what fruit would you like to have for your snack today?
Right. Setting the parameters and letting them choose within the parameters.
Yes.
Yeah. And for those who may or may not be parents, but they're juggling a complex home life, whether they're caring for aging parents or they're caring for children or they're caring for both while working full time, aside from kind of splitting up the meal prepping and then also having ingredients delivered from the grocery store if possible, what are some other ways they can save time and as well as cut costs?
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple things. I think first is even just backing up a little bit and figuring out how to, I guess I want to say become committed to it, figure out that why of why you're doing it. Because I think once you figure out why you're doing it and you become committed to it, then you can make time for it. It's everyone has like so much going on and I get that. But I think it's figuring out like what in your household do you really care about? What are things that are important to you? And for me, sometimes it even goes beyond like the food and having to be healthy food and all that. It's like sitting down with a meal, sitting down to dinner as a family, whatever your family might look like, or inviting people over. To me, that's like very important and core to our household. So once I get on board with that, it keeps me, I guess, motivated to like put in the energy to do all of that. And then getting back to your question of how to make it easy. So I think just coming up with systems and routines and figuring out your habits and what you're doing throughout the week and what your meals look like, really taking a step back and figuring out ways to incorporate the kind of meal that you want to have, but also make it become a part of your regular rhythm and habit. You don't want it to be like, oh, I'm super motivated today, so I'm going to spend my whole Saturday doing this thing. Well, you're not going to do that every week, right? That's going to fade really fast. So figuring things out like, okay, can I, I'm already spending an hour Monday night making dinner. Let me just do a few extra things, spending some time Friday afternoon or Saturday morning, like looking at the week ahead, jotting down what am I going to have for my dinners each night? What do I want them to look like? And then that way you're not making all of those decisions last minute, right? Like you're not heading into dinner being like, oh, now I have to decide what to eat. And I'm just it's easy to order takeout.
Exactly. Yeah. Because usually at the point that you're starting to think about dinner, one, you're already hungry.
Yes.
And two, you've already made so many decisions throughout the day that it's just one more thing you don't want to have to think about. So yeah, you'll
Yes.
start to your default. That's just human nature.
So you have to really think through, how do I get around that? You know your habits, you know your patterns, and how do you figure out ways to adjust those and shift those to like what is your ultimate goal? Is your ultimate goal to sit down with your family, not be like up, like still in the kitchen, but like all sit down and have a meal together? Is that your goal? And if so, how can you kind of shift a little bit of what you're doing to make that happen?
I will admit I do have to trick myself.
Yeah. No, I agree. Right? Like you have to, even if you know you're doing it, like that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, I have to outsmart myself. I have to manipulate myself. I have to like dangle the carrots sometimes to get me to do the thing that I know I need to be doing. Yeah. And I will say one thing I have noticed just within our family is when the meals are planned out in advance, even if it's just, okay, I know what I'm eating Thursday and Friday. So I need to make sure I go to the grocery store by Tuesday.
Yeah.
But knowing what's coming just eases it just takes so much friction out of my week.
There's a mental load for sure.
Exactly. Exactly. The more people in your family, the more complicated meal planning and cooking becomes for many people. And not having to navigate all of those moving parts on a day to day, it's just such a relief. Such a relief.
Yeah. Well, if you've kind of written it down, not you're kind of tricking yourself or putting yourself into like, okay, this is what we're having. But then if you start having questions, like you said, like the closer it gets to dinner time, what are we having? And if you don't know and you're not confident in that choice, people are going to start having opinions. But if you already know, maybe you can write it out on Wednesday. Here's what we're having each night. It's like, well, this is what we're having. You're not, I'm not asking for input on this. This is like already decided. Like we had,
Totally.
this is the food we have. It's already, and if it's already there and chopped, that's the ultimate trick, because it's like, if you've already done the heavy lifting, you're not going to order takeout if you've already put in all this hard work to make it happen up front.
Right, right. Because then all that work you've done spoils in the fridge.
Yes. And you don't want that. So
Here's
That's
something very valuable about writing out the meal plan for the week and putting it on the wall, particularly if you have grade school children and younger, because there really is something for them psychologically that makes it far more acceptable if you're not telling them, but
Mhm.
it's just there. You know, if I tell my son it's time to take out the compost, that creates a lot more drama than if I tell him to set a timer for 10 minutes to take out the compost. And then when the timer goes off, it's like, it's no big deal. It's just like, okay, it's time to do this thing. Right.
Yeah.
Didn't come from mom. It came from the iPad. So it's okay.
Mhm. Well, and I think with kids, like they want to know, it's almost like it helps them feel safe. I know that sounds strange, but if they know that like dinner's already decided, and because if you're at dinner time trying to figure it out and not sure, they pick up on that, right? Like they pick up like, oh, what are we going to have? And then it kind of like, it's a spiral of like this hectic, chaotic dinner time of like, oh, we don't know what we're going to make. We got to scramble. We got to do this. And that they don't like that feeling either. They like having that safety and security of, oh, this is what we're having for dinner each night. And we just go for it.
That's a really good point. Yeah, children do often feel more calm and secure if they know what's coming and they know what to expect from their world. I mean, I don't even think that's limited to children. I think to some degree we all.
We all like that. Yes.
Yeah. We all like that. Allison, is there anything that we haven't discussed yet that you feel would be especially helpful for people who are new to meal planning, looking to get started with meal planning and feeling a little bit uncertain or overwhelmed at that concept?
Yeah. With the overwhelm, I think one, going back to the why,
Mhm.
two, just, starting small. There can be different versions of doing it. And I think just glancing and making a decision on what you're going to eat before mealtime can be a really huge first step. Just deciding this is what my meals are going to look like. And maybe it's just deciding I'm going to have a protein, a vegetable, and a carb, or, whatever you've decided you want your plates to look like, or just having that decision made before mealtime can be huge. And then from there, there's ways to go above and beyond that, like batching and, chopping your vegetables in advance and really streamlining it to where it's really efficient. And of course, with Prep Dish, we want to help people do that. Like that's our goal, is to help people make it really easy and efficient and not have to think about it. But at the core, I think just having somewhat of a plan for the week is so helpful and a good place to start.
For those who are unfamiliar, what is batching?
So batching is doing familiar tasks all together to make it more efficient. So an example would be your laundry, right? You could do your laundry every day. Every day you have some dirty clothes, you could throw them in the laundry. You could do it every 3 days. You could do it every 7 days. I actually will sometimes do laundry once every 2 weeks because I don't find that it takes that much more time when I do 2 weeks worth of laundry than if I do 3 days worth of This is for my laundry, not my children's.
Oh,
Children's laundry has to be done more often. So that's an example of where it's more efficient to do it less often and do it all together. Now, when you're in the kitchen, there are so many examples where batching saves so much time over the course of a week and especially a year if it's something you do regularly. One example is just chopping vegetables. So if every night you pull out a cutting board and a knife, you wash the vegetables and you cut them, time yourself, say it takes, 10 minutes to do all of that if you just have like 1 or 2 vegetables. Or you could, at the beginning of the week, chop all of your vegetables and wash all the vegetables, chop them, wash the cutting board, all that. And maybe that takes an hour. But if you add up and then like throughout the week, you're not doing it, it's just like over time, it really is so much more efficient to just do it all at once. You already have the cutting board out. You already have your vegetables washed. You're already like in the zone. You can maybe listen to a podcast or, one person said they like watch Netflix. I don't know. I like to just zone out. Sometimes I find it's really comforting just to like zone out and have it be quiet, but get all that chopping done. And then each night you're just having to pull out the vegetable and it's already done for you. And it makes mealtime a lot easier. There's also things you can do like making a big sauce or a marinade and using it a few times throughout the week. maybe even freezing half of it. Because again, if you're going to be making a pesto, making twice as much pesto doesn't take twice as long. It just takes maybe a minute longer because you're just increasing the ingredients. So just figuring out ways where you can plump those things together so that way you're not just scrambling and like doing laundry every day.
Yeah. Yeah. The freezer is a greatly underutilized resource for meal prepping and planning.
Yes, for sure. Because it's just so easy to increase the amount of anything you're making, whether it's like a lasagna or a soup or something like, or broth or whatever it is, just like making extra and then putting that extra in the freezer. And then we've all had those weeks where you need to pull something out of the freezer. And
Absolutely.
yeah, like breakfast items are really good. If you do like frittatas or egg muffins or any sort of muffin, like those are really easy to just pop some in the freezer and save some for a busy day.
Love it. I love it. Any other additional pro tips, as it were, with regards to batching or eliminating time? I think time is the big...
Time is the tricky one. I think as you go through the process, you'll kind of figure out just ways to streamline it and do more things together. Kitchen tools, there's a few that really make a difference, like a good chef's knife makes a big difference. Taking maybe some sort of class to learn how to chop vegetables if you're not comfortable chopping vegetables can be huge, because if you can double how fast you can chop a vegetable, you're going to increase or decrease the amount of time you're spending. So some basic cooking classes if you're not comfortable. I also know some people will just chop everything in a food processor or something like that. So figuring out like where you feel like you're slowed down, and then is there a way to do that? You can also have other people in the house help out. Like, I've already, my little 5 and 3-year-old are in training, but my 3-year-old chops vegetables for me all the time. And I have to, I'm still at the point where I need to watch him and monitor, but I know that time I'm investing now, in a few years, he's going to be able to do it on his own. And I'm really going to be able to have these extra sous chefs around me that can help. So I'm investing some time up front now to save myself time in the future. So there's some little tricks like that as well. And buying pre-chopped, that's kind of a budget thing, but a time and money figuring out. And that can change week to week or depending on the season. But if you're in a season where it's just really hectic, buying pre-chopped vegetables can be a good option. And sometimes, they're not that much more, buying the shredded cabbage or something can be a really time efficient thing to do. So just figuring out where you're struggling, and then there's usually a little trick.
I think one thing too that people often forget is that there is a learning curve with this, just like everything else. And when you are starting, it will take longer than you think it will. Yes. And maybe that's a situation where you only commit to prepping 2 dinners a week or just a quick lunch for the week until you get some of those habits and those systems in place, and then you can expand out. And that's okay, right? Start where you're at, expand a little bit, and then expand more as you're capable and have the bandwidth to do so. So that I love what you said about doing everything one day. That's not realistic for the whole week. It immediately reminded me of January, where everybody's like, I'm going to get into shape. And then they go to the gym for an hour and a half when they haven't exercised in 3 to 6 months. And then they can't do anything for a whole week because they've gone too far and done too much. And this is definitely an area where I see time and time again where people will jump in whole hog and download something off the internet and commit to a program or a plan for a specific period of time. And then when that time is over, whether it's 30 days or 6 weeks or what have you, they're so burned out because they went from nothing to everything that they aren't able to maintain the consistency that is really needed to make long-term changes to our health and how we want our families to eat.
Yeah, no, and that goes back to that commitment of, okay, this is important to me, and not making it, you're going to have to shift it, and it's going to change over time. Like, every time I add a child, or if the kids change school, whenever it is, like the schedule changes constantly. So there's constantly a shifting of like what food you're buying and how much and what days, like I feel like every few months, the day I prep on changes. Like as good as it is to have, okay, I always prep on this day, that's changed for me several times over, and it will continue to change for me. Like I'm sure once the summer hits and my kids are home, we're going to prep on different days and different amounts of food. It's just going to be different. They continue to eat more. I don't know what to do with 3 boys. It's like the amount that they can, and the baby's not eating yet. So I'm just waiting. Once he it's going to be so much food.
Those growth spurts are insane. It's just insane how much food they can consume when they're going through a growth spurt.
Yes. So I don't know. I think we may be buying a second refrigerator soon.
Yeah. Yep. Or some Texas farmland.
Well, and we've started with so we have a garden and chickens and bees. And so we're trying to do some of our own food. And that's been fun and a good way to get the kids involved. Ivan, my oldest, went out to the garden and threw some watermelon seeds out before his dad had a chance to help him. And he goes out every day looking for his watermelon. And he keeps asking me, did you water the watermelon? I'm like, well, buddy.
Do you know where he tossed them? No.
He claims he knows, but I don't even know that he knows.
Yeah.
But there's somewhere out there.
Are you guys coming in quietly and planting watermelon in a known place so he's not disappointed at the end of the summer?
He's going to have to live with that. Like, this is a good life lesson.
It is a good life lesson, yes. Pay attention to where you plant your seeds. I feel like that is a kind of a meta lesson. Is there a question that I have not asked you yet that you wished I had?
Oh, goodness. I don't think so. I feel some of the big things of, figuring out why this is important to you. And, again, the grace piece of it's not going to happen overnight. You'll have to try, but we're going to be eating the rest of our lives. So to me, if you're going to pick a cause to really figure out how to figure out, this is a really important one, right? Like what you eat plays such a huge role in your energy levels and your health long term. So it's worthwhile to continue to tweak and streamline and figure out how to continue to do it better.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I do want to give you an opportunity to plug Prep Dish and share some of the benefits that those of us who use it can experience. I mean, I can wax poetic about it, but I'd actually love to hear it from you. Like, you saw this need and there's plenty of meal plans out there, but what you've done is just different enough that at least it really works very well for me. So I'd love for you to share what people and what users, because you have this community as well that gives feedback all the time, what people are experiencing when they invest in something like Prep Dish.
Well, thank you for saying all of that. And yeah, I mean, I feel like what I've created is now what I have to use at home. Which is interesting because when I first created it was 11 years ago. I was single and working as a personal chef. So I saw the need with my clients that I was cooking for, but I always was making the recipes, but didn't have to do it. It did help. Like I would do prep day because when I got home from cooking all day with personal chef clients, I didn't want to start from scratch to make a meal. So I would do it. But now that I have a family, it's like, oh, wow, like I've created something that I have to use every week or we're just not going to eat the way I want to eat. So it's been really cool to have it come full circle like that and to have created something that has become such a part of our household. We also have a team of prep dish, and I think we're all basically busy moms. We all use the meal plans. When it comes time to test them, we, dish them out to everyone on the team to try them out. So they've all been tried out, not just at my house, but we swap them around and these are the things that we're cooking at home. And to me, it's just the most efficient system that I've come up with to get healthy, tasty food on the table each night. And our goal really going back to that, it's like, yes, it's the healthy food. Yes, leading with taste. But also, I really want families to be able to sit down and connect at dinner time. And it's really hard to do that, right? Like you have to be intentional with it. You have to create the space and time, and you have to be thinking up front. You can't just wait until 6 o'clock and be like, okay, we're all going to sit down. Like you've got to really, this is something that has to be thought about in advance if you want to make it happen. And that requires a system, and that's something people can create on their own. But we've also done the heavy lifting and been like, okay, here's your grocery list. Here's what you need to chop. And then you can sit down and have a lovely meal each night. And hopefully it's one where it's calm. And I mean, as calm as it can be depending on your household dynamics. But, you can actually sit down too, right? Whoever's preparing the meals. Because I found too often it's so chaotic that people, like everyone's coming in at different times and all that. And I just think it's so important to sit down to family meals and have the time and space to connect. So the healthy food is part of it. Tasty food is part of it. But a big part of it is having that time and the like kind of sacred space of mealtime.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I didn't realize that all of the team had children. So how many kid taste testers do you have approving these meals before they go out?
Yeah, I think the core team of us is like 4 or 5 of us, and the age ranges of the kids are up to like teenagers, and there are some that are pickier eaters than mine are. So there's all different taste preferences that are testing out the meals. So it'd be 1, 2, 3. Oh my gosh. Yeah. But they're like early teens now. So 3, 4, like probably, well, no, if you can't mind, like a dozen taste testers,
Nice.
good tasters probably that are going through them. So yeah, our meal plan editor basically each month she kind of divvies up the meal plans and we each take one. And after they've been written, they all get tested at once by someone on the team.
That's a solid sample size.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
My son is also not a picky eater, and he will occasionally like look down, on a meal that's a little unfamiliar.
Mm-hmm.
But with all the prep dish meals, even the fish, he at the worst he'll be like, it was okay. I'll take it. I'll take the win.
I feel like the fish is the biggest one that we hear from people when they first start trying prep dish, that like, oh, my kid ate salmon. And I think there's a few things that go into it. I think one of them is there's also a confidence that comes from the person serving the meals when it's because in a way they didn't make the choice. So I think it gets served with a different kind of feeling behind it. But, there's also different flavors that have gone into it and stuff. But yeah, we hear a lot that like, oh, my kid ate salmon for the first time. I feel like that's the most common like first that people talk about with prep.
And it's a huge win. Like getting your kid to eat is a huge win.
I mean, yeah, building that brain health one salmon at a time.
Yeah. I will say one of the things I've personally experienced too using prep dish is figuring out how to cook certain things that had always eluded me. I spent early adulthood and all of my adolescence as a vegetarian. So there was a lot of animal proteins that I never learned how to cook until I was in my mid-20s. Yeah, with prep dish, I cooked scallops for the first time, and they came out perfectly, which I was very.
Oh my gosh, I wish scallops were not so expensive and we would put them on the menu a lot more because they're so easy and so tasty. My kids love scallops.
They're fantastic. They're absolutely fantastic. But yeah, a little cost prohibitive. And then finally understood what I needed to do with a pork tenderloin to actually make it taste moist and juicy and wonderful, which was something I didn't think could happen. And it really is. The way that everything's written out is simple and easy to follow. I've always really appreciated that about prep dish.
Yeah, well, yeah, thank you. I know I do like to think that we're kind of teaching people through having them create it over time, even if people are only using the plans for a certain period of time. When they're done with it, they do have an increased skill level. So that's awesome.
Before we wrap up, I would love for you to share something with our listeners about you personally that is blasphemous.
Oh my goodness. I think I remember, because I know you asked this beforehand. So I have a glass of wine 5 to 6 nights a week.
And that's 3 boys. Of course you do.
I know. I feel like in the nutrition world, like wine has become so controversial. And but yeah, I'm a very moderate drinker. Like if I like never have more than 2 glasses, but I'm a very regular drinker. So blasphemous, I know.
Blasphemous. I mean, honestly, though, with nutrition, there isn't much left that isn't considered blasphemous in one way or another.
Like I eat eggs, I eat a lot of fat, I eat a lot of meat, like I eat a lot of meat. Like
Yeah.
a lot of the things that I used to think were blasphemous, but I'm like I feel like the wine still gets like a lot of controversy on the internet.
Yeah, for sure.
But I'm also very picky about my wine. If people follow me on Prep Dish, there's I drink like a low sugar, low alcohol, like no additive type wine. Just like quality of food. I feel like quality of wine makes a big difference.
Definitely. Allison, thank you so much for spending this time with us. I really appreciate it and dropping so many lovely nuggets of wisdom to help us out.
Yeah, thank you for having me and for, supporting Prep Dish for all of these years. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely happy to. If you have found some nuggets of wisdom, make sure to subscribe, rate, and share Blasphemous Nutrition with those you care about. As you navigate the labyrinth of health advice out there, remember, health is a journey, not a dietary dictatorship. Stay skeptical, stay daring, and challenge the norms that no longer serve you. If you've got burning questions or want to share your own flavor of rebellion, slide into my DMs. Your stories fuel me, and I love hearing them. Thanks again for tuning into Blasphemous Nutrition. Until next time, this is Aimee signing off, reminding you that truth is nuanced, and any dish can be made better with a little bit of sass.